इन बड़ा सुश्रुतु बड़ो अनुपम जय राधा माधव कुंज बिहारी गोपी जन वल्लभ गिरिवरधारी। जय राधा माधव कुंज बिहारी गोपी जन वल्लभ गिरिवरधारी। जय राधा माधव यशोदानंदन व्रज जन रंजन यशोदानंदन यशोदानंदन व्रज जन रंजन यशोदानंदन यमुना तीरवनचारी। यमुना तीरवनचारी। जय राधा माधव कुंज विहारी गोपी जन वल्लभ गिरिवरधारी। जय राधा माधव कुंज बिहारी गोपी जन वल्लभ गिरिवरधारी। जय राधा माधव यशोदानंदन व्रज जन रंजन यमुना तीरवनचारी। यमुना तीरवनचारी। यमुना तीरवनचारी। जय राधा माधव कुंज बिहारी गोपी जन वल्लभ गिरिवरधारी। हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे। हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे। हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे। जय राधा नील माधव जय राधा नील माधव जय राधा नील माधव श्री राधे। गौरनिताय जय गौरनिताय गौरनिताय जय गौरनिताय। जय प्रभुपाद जय जय प्रभुपाद जय प्रभुपाद जय श्रील प्रभुपाद। जय ओम विष्णुपाद परमहंस परिव्राजकाचार्य अष्टोत्तर शत श्री श्रीमती डिवाइन ग्रेस अभय चरणारविंद भक्ति वेदांत स्वामी महाराज श्रील प्रभुपाद की जय। अनंत कोटि वैष्णव वृंद की जय। नामाचार्य श्रील हरिदास ठाकुर की जय। Nitai Gaura Premanande. Hari Hari Bol. Hare Krishna. We welcome everybody for today's morning Srimad Bhagavatam class. So, in the beginning, we'll recite one verse. This is written by Kuresha in glorification of Ramanuja. So, today being the appearance day of Sri Ramanujacharya, we're discussing this verse. So, please recite after me. Yaha Nityam Achyuta Padambuja Yugma Rukma Vyamohataha Tatitarani Trinaya Mene Asmat Guroho Bhagavataha Asya Daya Ekasindho Ramanujasya Charanau Sharanam Prapadye Yo Nityamachyuta Padambuja Yugma Rukma Vyamohatastaditarani Trinaya Mene Asmadguror Bhagavatosya Dayaika Sindho Ramanujasya Charanau Sharanam Prapadye Yo Nityamachyuta Padambuja Yugma Rukma Vyamohatastaditarani Trinaya Mene Asmadguror Bhagavatosya Dayaika Sindho Ramanujasya Charanau Sharanam Prapadye Yo Nityamachyuta Padambuja Yugma Rukma Vyamohatastaditarani Trinaya Mene Asmadguror Bhagavatosya Dayaika Sindho Ramanujasya Charanau Sharanam Prapadye Yo Nityamachyuta Padambuja Yugma Rukma Vyamohatastaditarani Trinaya Mene Asmadguror Bhagavatosya Dayaika Sindho Ramanujasya Charanau Sharanam Prapadye Yo Nityamachyuta Padambuja Yugma Rukma Vyamohatastaditarani Trinaya Mene Asmadguror Bhagavatosya Dayaika Sindho Ramanujasya Charanau Sharanam Prapadye. Hare Krishna. So this is an eulogy of Kuresha, as I said, whom we are all well acquainted with. The last verse that he wrote in glorification of Ramanuja. So all Sri Vaishnavas, they recite this verse practically every day. The meaning of the verse is quite simple. Yaha means one who. Nityam means all the time, as all of us know. Achyuta Padambuja Yugma. Yugma means in a pair. So two. So Pada Ambuja, so the lotus feet. So Achyuta Padambuja means of Krishna. So one who is always meditating on the lotus feet of Krishna, on the two lotus feet of Krishna. Rukma means shining. So the lotus feet of Krishna is said to be shining. So Vyamohataha means out of great fondness or out of great affection, not out of force. We are made to meditate on the lotus feet on force, by force, but not like that. But he is doing that out of great affection. And tad itarani means anything except that. Other than that, that means anything that is material, he sees that as trinaya mene. He sees this as insignificant as a piece of grass. And asmat guror bhagavatosya dayaika sindhoho. So my guru, he's saying like that, Kuresha. And then bhagavataha asya dayaika sindhoho. So he is an ocean of compassion. Ramanujasya charano sharanam prapadye. So I take shelter at such personalities' lotus feet. So a very warm welcome to all the devotees assembled both offline and online. Today we'll discuss some pastimes of Ramanujacharya, which many of you might not have heard before. Some of the very rare pastimes of Ramanujacharya, along with one of his very close associates, whose name is Govinda. So I'll just start with Mangalacharan prayers. Om Ajnanatimirandhasya Jnananjanashalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupah Kada Mahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guroho Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamshta Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatan Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhan Vitamshta Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swamin Niti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pashtatya Deshatarine Namo Mahavadanyaya Krishna Prema Pradayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namne Gauratvishe Namaha. He Krishna Karuna Sindho Dina Bandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Haripriye Vancha Kalpatarubhyashta Kripa Sindubhya Evacha Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. A very good morning and a very warm welcome to all the devotees assembled both offline and online for today's morning class. So as all of you know, today marks the auspicious appearance day of Shripad Ramanujacharya. So today we will discuss a few pastimes of Ramanuja with one of his very close associates known as Govinda, which are not generally discussed in devotee circles. And before that, I would just like to speak on the special position that Ramanujacharya shares in from the paradigm of the view of all the Vaishnava Sampradayas. So the special position that Ramanujacharya shares. So in the Sri Vaishnava Sampradaya, they say that before Ramanavami, because all of us know that Ramanavami is quite fast approaching, just 4 days from today, which happens to be on the Navami of the Chaitra Masa Shukla Paksha. So before Ramanavami, we are supposed to discuss Ramakatha. But Sri Vaishnavas, they say that before Ramakatha, you have to discuss Ramanuja Katha, they say. Because Ramakatha, although we may know, we may have heard many times since childhood, but Ramakatha is not very easy to understand. There are many secrets in the Ramayana which, many of us might not have heard. And many of the secrets we may not be qualified to hear also. So that's why they say that Ramanuja Katha gives one the qualification to hear Ramakatha thereafter. And coincidentally, just 4 days before Rama Navami is Ramanuja Panchami, they say, because today is Panchami. So Chaitra Masa Shukla Paksha Panchami today. So Ramanujacharya, as all of us know, was not an ordinary personality. He was an incarnation of Adishesha himself, right? Ananta Shesha himself. Anantastu krite proktaha tretayam lakshmano smritaha dvapare balaramashta kalau Ramanujo munihi, they say. In the Krita Yuga, Ananta Shesha, he came in his original form as Ananta. In the Treta Yuga, he came as the younger brother to Rama as Lakshmana. In the Dwapara Yuga, he came as the elder brother to Krishna in the form of Balarama. And in Kali Yuga, the same personality comes as Ramanuja Muni, they say, not in his exalted or extraordinary form, but he comes in the form of a simple sannyasi as Ramanuja Muni. So, in the Sri Vaishnava Sampradaya, the word Shesha is extremely important. You can say in one sense that this word defines the entire Sampradaya. As Adishesha himself, Ramanuja gives the definition of the word Shesha in his Sri Bhashya. He says, Paragata Atishaya Adanechayaha Upadeyattvameva Yasya Swarupam Sahasheshaha Parasheshi. He says, what does this mean? Upadeyattvameva Yasya Swarupam. That means that one who lives only to add glory to his master, he is called a Shesha. And everybody else is called a Sheshi. Of course, that everybody else is ironically said because everybody else is only one personality, who is the Supreme Lord himself. So Supreme Lord is Sheshi and all Jivatmans are known as Shesha to the Supreme Lord, right? So one who lives or one who resolves that each of my activities is only meant to add glory to my master, he is called a Shesha. And as Adishesha himself, in the spiritual world, Anantashesha or Adishesha renders a multitude of services to the Supreme Lord. Sripad Yamunacharya, whom all of us know, he, in one of his very famous works known as Stotra Ratna, from which Prabhupada quotes 2 or 3 verses in his purports very often, he states in one verse the kind of services that Adishesha performs in the spiritual world. He says, Nivasa Shayya Asana Paduka Amshuka Upadana Varsha Atapavaranaadibihi Sharira Bhedaihi Tava Sheshatangataihi Yathochitam Shesha Itirite Janaihi. He says, a very beautiful verse. He says here that what are the kinds of services that Adishesha performs? First of all, Nivasa Shayya. Shayya means he becomes the bed for the Lord to recline on. When the Lord wants to take rest, Adishesha becomes the bed. Thereafter, he becomes the asana. Asana means he becomes the chair on which the Lord can sit when the Lord wants to sit. Paduka, he becomes the footwear of the Lord when the Lord wants to walk. Amshuka, he becomes the white cloth with which the Lord wipes his body. In the spiritual world, of course. Upadana, he becomes every medium for the Lord's enjoyment or for the Lord's satisfaction. And not just that, Varsha Atapa Varanadibihi. Varsha, when it rains heavily, just like when Krishna was taken from Mathura to Gokula, at that time it started raining heavily. It was 12 o'clock in the night. And we know that Adishesha came and gave complete protection to Krishna. And he didn't allow even a drop of rain to touch Krishna, right? So Varsha, Atapa means when there is scorching sunlight, he protects Krishna. He protects the Lord. So Sharira Bhedaihi, these are just a few of the services that he renders in the spiritual world. Sharira Bhedaihi means he expands himself into a multitude of forms and renders unlimited service to the Supreme Lord in the spiritual world. And the same Adishesha, he comes as Ramanuja Muni in the Kali Yuga. And when he comes as Ramanuja Muni, he again renders a multitude of services to the Supreme Lord as well as to humanity. And therefore, his position is extremely special. Of course, even from the point of view of all the 4 Vaishnava Sampradayas, Ramanuja shares a very special position because, as I've told many times before, he was the first Acharya to publicly and to, in a large scale, in a mass scale, propagate the teachings of theism, right? The dualism, which later on Madhvacharya and others, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and others, they also propagated, but to do something for the first time really takes guts, right? So Ramanuja was the first person who did that. So his position is actually extremely special in all the 4 Vaishnava Sampradayas. So today, we'll just discuss a few pastimes of Ramanujacharya with one of his very close associates known as Govinda. Jai Shri Shri Radha Neelamadhava Bhagavan Ki Jai. So this Govinda was the maternal cousin of Ramanujacharya. Unfortunately, in devotee circles, whenever we discuss the pastimes of Ramanujacharya, we discuss a lot about Kuresha, we discuss a lot about Dasharathi, about Dhanurdasa, many others. But somehow, I don't know what's the reason, but Govinda has not been very very much in detail discussed in devotee circles. And that's why I thought that I would take this opportunity to discuss about him, because he is said to be the closest associate of Ramanujacharya. The day when Ramanujacharya left the world after having lived for 120 years, 120 long years, he actually placed his head on the lap of Govinda and his lotus feet on the lap of Dasharathi. Quraysh already had left by that time, but he actually placed his head on the lap of Govinda and then left the material world. So this goes to show how close Govinda was to Ramanuja. So just a brief recap or brief introduction. All of you will surely have heard this, but still a brief introduction to Govinda's past. So Govinda was born almost at the time of Ramanuja in the same year, 1017 AD. Right? All of us know Ramanuja appeared in 1017 AD. So today will mark the 1005th birth anniversary of Ramanujacharya. So 1017 he appeared on this day, that is Chaitra Masa Shukla Paksha and Panchami. And Ramanuja was born to Kantimati and Keshava Somayaji. That was the name of the parents of Ramanujacharya. So Kantimati was also known by the name of Bhudevi. So in many of the South Indian temples, you must have seen, there is Bhudevi as well as Shri Devi. You must have seen those two deities along with the Utsava Murti, right? So Ramanuja's mother's name was also known as Bhudevi, and Bhudevi's sister was known as Shri Devi. And both of them had an elder brother whose name was Shri Shailapurna. So we'll discuss about Shri Shailapurna also today because it comes as a part of the story. Shri Shailapurna, even before Ramanujacharya or Govinda was born, he had moved to Tirupati. He was a very close disciple of Yamunacharya. And being a very close disciple of Yamunacharya, he understood the heart of Yamunacharya. And therefore, even before Anantacharya was sent by Ramanuja, many decades later, he had moved to Tirupati to do the same service actually. But somehow he could not completely accomplish at that point of time. But still, he moved to Tirupati for doing the same service. So, Ramanuja was born to Bhudevi and Govinda was born to Shri Devi. Almost, they say, in the same year. So, Govinda and Ramanuja, they were both born in the place called Sri Perumbudur, which is very close to Chennai, present-day Chennai. And it is very close to Kanchipuram also. It is like equidistant between Chennai and Kanchipuram. It falls between Chennai and Kanchipuram. Many of us might have been there. So, both of them were born in Sri Perumbudur. But after Ramanujacharya's father, Keshava Somayaji, he left his body, he left the world. Then Ramanuja's family as well as Govinda's family, both of them, they moved to Kanchipuram. Because Kanchipuram in those days was said to be the high seat of learning, high seat of Vedic learning. And they had heard of a personality called Yadava Prakasha who was very, very famous. Yadava Prakasha was no ordinary person actually. Many of us, when we hear the story of Ramanuja, we just tend to sideline some of the very important personalities that come in his biography. Like Yadava Prakasha, he was no ordinary personality. In the Advaita Vedanta also, there are many, many branches. Just like in the Vaishnavism, there are many sampradayas. So similarly, in the Advaita philosophy, there are many branches. And Yadava Prakasha was like the founder of one of these branches. And he had his own commentary on the Vedanta Sutras. He had his own commentary on Bhagavad Gita, on the Upanishads. He was a very towering scholar, actually. So both of them, Ramanuja and Govinda, they wanted to study under Yadava Prakasha. Therefore, they moved along with their families to Kanchipuram. And we know what happened after that. Ramanuja had frequent, tussles with his own guru. Tasya yatha kapyasam pundarikam eva makshini. Though when Yadav Prakasha said that, the eyes of the Lord are like the posteriors of the monkey, Ramanuja was very, very, he got extremely, not furious, but he got extremely sad when hearing that, because the eyes of the Lord, the beautiful eyes of the Lord cannot be compared to such a, such a filthy thing. Anyway, so these kinds of tussles happened. I will not go to the story because all of you have heard about that many times. So, Ramanuja had these tussles, and then Yadav Prakasha finally decided with some of his very sincere students that we want to end Ramanuja's life. And therefore, they took Ramanuja as well as Govinda to Kashi. Of course, on the way, Ramanuja escaped, but they wanted to take him to Kashi, and there in Manikarnika Ghat, they wanted to drown him. right? Because if they did the same job in Kanchipuram, it would be known by everybody. Some or the other day, they feared that everybody will get to know. And so therefore, they thought that better to do the same thing in an external place outside of Kanchipuram. So they took, I mean, we know on the way, Govinda got to know their plot, and Govinda informed Ramanuja overnight, and he cautioned him to escape immediately. And he cautioned him to go through the forests and not go through the main road, because if you go through the main road, there is every possibility that these people will come back and catch you. Therefore, you go through the forest. And so Ramanuja came back. We know what happened there. So Govinda, on the other hand, he walked along with Yadava Prakasha and his retinue to Kashi. So there, when they were taking bath in Manikarnika Ghat, what happened was that a Shivalinga flowed into the hands of Govinda. And here starts the story actually. So this Shivalinga flowed into the hands of Govinda, and he thought, because till this time he was not very much convinced of the Vaishnava philosophy, although he took birth in the Vaishnava family, in a Vaishnava family, but he was not very much convinced to the Vaishnava philosophy, because Ramanuja had not yet started preaching. And moreover, he had a guru in Yadava Prakasha, whom he really respected. And so immediately what he did was, he took this Shivalinga to Yadava Prakasha and showed him. And I don't know if it is coincidental or anything, but it happens to be the case that most of the Advaitins today are Shaivites, right? But actually, if you see, the philosophy of Advaita has got nothing to do with Shaivism. But somehow or the other, most of the Advaitins are Shaivites, and they put Vibhuti, the horizontal Tilak. So this Yadav Prakasha was also, it said that he was a great devotee of Shiva. And when he saw the Shivalinga in the hands of Govinda, he was very much astonished. And he actually initiated Govinda then and there itself. Initiated as in, he gave him a new name. In Tamil, of course, Tamil is quite a difficult language for me also to pronounce. But they say he christened him. He gave him a new name as Ullangai Kondandra Nayanar. I hope I got that pronunciation right. If Bhagavashampu's mother was there, she would have helped me, I guess. But anyway, so what that means is that it means that one to whom the Shivalinga flowed into his hands, something like that. So he gave him this new name, and Govinda was elated. And when they were on their way back to Kanchipuram, they reached Tirupati. And near Tirupati is a very, very sacred place for Shaivites, known as Kalahasti. And this place is actually very sacred for Gaudiya Vaishnavas also. Many might ask me why. Because this place was visited by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in his South Indian tour. When we had gone to Tirupati once, along with the Leeds team, we had been to this place, Kalahasti. It's a very beautiful temple, a very huge temple, and it is one of the archaeological sites of India. It's the sculpture and everything is very beautiful over there. It is said to be as old as the Tirupati temple. So it is quite old. And so when they reached Tirupati, there Govinda decided that I will stay at Kalahasti and I will worship this deity. And so he left the retinue of Yadav Prakasha. They came back to Kanchipuram, but he stayed there. Govinda, he stayed there at Kalahasti. And at the same time, it is said that the previous night, the authorities of the Kalahasti temple, they got a dream in which Shiva appeared and said that this Govinda will come. You have to make him the director of the temple, because he is a very special person. So Govinda came and he was given a very special position in the Kalahasti temple. And he started worshipping Shiva over there. So he completely forgot about his roots. His roots is that, he was connected to the great Ramanuja himself, but he completely forgot about his roots and he became a Shaivite. So this was scene 1. Now in the scene 2, because we cannot discuss everything in between. In the scene 2, Ramanujacharya has taken sannyas now. In Kanchipuram, he has taken sannyas. And after he took sannyas, he got 2 of his most confidential disciples in Kuresha and Dasharathi. Dasharathi was said to be the first person who joined Ramanuja as a disciple after he took sannyas. And therefore, he was known as Mudali Andan in Tamil. Mudali Andan means the first person who became his disciple. And thereafter, Kuresh and his wife Andal, they also joined Ramanujacharya. But Ramanuja now was always thinking about Govinda, because he had heard what happened to him, that he has become a Shaivite. And he was actually feeling very much sorry for Govinda because he has gone on a different path. Not to say that he has gone on a wrong path, but he has gone on a different path. And he surely knows that he has to be brought back to Vaishnavism. So this is an extremely interesting story, how Govinda was brought back from Shaivism to Vaishnavism. This is not very much discussed in devotee circles, I guess. And so I would like to take this opportunity to discuss. So Ramanujacharya, he conjunctures in his mind that the best person to do this is Sri Shailapurna, because Sri Shailapurna is living in Tirupati, which is very close to Kalahasti. And moreover, he is the disciple of the great, he is a disciple of the great Yamunacharya. So Ramanuja, what he does is that he immediately sends two of his assistants to Tirupati to inform Sri Shailapurna that Govinda has to be brought back to Vaishnavism. And Sri Shailapurna had been contemplating on this all the while for so many years, but he had never ventured to do so. But when he gets this message by these two assistants, he immediately thinks that yes, he has to be brought back. So immediately what he does is that he gathers a group of his disciples. Sri Shailapurna gathers a group of his disciples, and all of them, they go to Kalahasti. And when they reach Kalahasti, Kalahasti is actually a very, very beautiful place. Whenever we get an opportunity, we can go there. It's actually a very beautiful place where there is a huge Shiva temple, and right in front of the temple, there is a pond. And every day, that of course that pond, nobody is allowed to bathe or anything. Every day they take the water of the pond for the ablution ceremony or for the abhishekam of Shiva right from that pond. So just like in all Vaishnava kshetras, they take from maybe Kaveri or Ganga or Yamuna. So similarly, they take from this pond. So, and apart from that, there is a beautiful garden. Even today, there is a beautiful garden for bringing flowers for the worship of Shiva. So Shailapurna, what he does is that he goes in front of this pond, he gathers all of his disciples, and he starts lecturing over there. After some time, what happens is that Govinda comes there. Govinda comes there for taking this water from the pond for the ablution or abhishekam ceremony of Shiva. So when Govinda comes there, Sri Shailapurna knows that, you cannot at once bring somebody from one faith to another faith. Right? This reminds me of His Grace Radheshyam Prabhu when he was sharing how, the first time he met His Holiness Radhana Swami Maharaj, he asked Maharaj whether, I'm used to chanting Rudram and Chamakam. Rudram and Chamakam happen to be the glorification of Shiva that is found in Rig Veda. It is very, very, very pleasing to the ears to hear also. So Radheshyam Prabhu told, I'm very, very attached to chanting this. Can I continue? And of course, if it was anybody else, he would have said, no, you cannot continue, right? But Maharaj didn't say that. Maharaj said that, yes, you can continue, no problem. Can I worship Shiva? Yes, you can continue. And then finally, when Radheshyam Prabhu was about to leave, he said, but it is not required, he said. So what rang in Radheshyam Prabhu's ears was that I can continue, I can continue, I can continue. And Radheshyam Prabhu shares that if I were told at that point of time that I have to give up Shiva's worship, maybe I would have left ISKCON. I would have given up ISKCON, but I would not have given up Shiva's worship, right? So he shares his realization. I guess this is also one of Maharaj's statements only. He says that it is better to lose first and win forever than to win first and lose forever, he says. So if he had told me that I am not supposed to worship Shiva in the beginning, he would have won at that point of time, because that is the philosophy of Krishna consciousness, right? But he would have lost me forever. That means I would have never become a Krishna's devotee. So anyway, so when Sri Shailapurna is there, camping on the banks of this pond, Govinda comes there, and Govinda immediately recognizes Sri Shailapurna because he is his maternal uncle. And Shailapurna also recognizes Govinda. But they both don't talk to each other. Govinda, because he knows that he has gone to a different faith, he goes by his job. He just goes on taking the water, filling the water in his pot. At that point of time, Sri Shailapurna, what he does is that very jokingly, he just gives he rebukes Govinda very lightly. He says that what is the use of cold bathing a smashanavasi, he says, because we know that Shiva resides in the graveyard, right? So just like if somebody, one of our relatives passes away, that time we go to the graveyard. And after coming back, we take bath, right? We don't take bath right in the graveyard. If we do that again after coming back, we have to take another bath, right? There is no use of taking bath in the graveyard. Of course, we know that Shiva is a very exalted personality, but still, to mildly rebuke this Govinda, he says that there is no use of Abhishek for Shiva because he's staying in the graveyard. He says like that. He just says this one small thing and he leaves it there. He doesn't go into great depths for discussing the philosophy with Govinda in the first instance. So Govinda hears this and he thinks that it's just a joke that he's cracking, and he goes on his way. And Sri Shailapurna comes back to Tirupati. A few days elapse, and after that, he again takes a huge number of his disciples, a greater number of his followers, and then he again goes to Kalahasti. And he goes to the same place where he was camping the last time. And there again, he starts lecturing to his disciples. But this time he has done another thing. What he has done is that he has brought one of the verses of Yamunacharya that is there in the Stotra Ratna. And this talks exactly about the position of demigods, right? So he writes that verse on a palm leaf, and then he puts it on the way from the temple to the pond, because there is only one way from the temple to the pond. So he puts it on the ground. And so when he was lecturing, Govinda comes as usual for collecting water, and he chances upon this palm leaf, and the letters in the palm leaf actually attract him. And he reads that verse. That verse goes like this: Swabhavika anavadhika atishaya ishitritvam narayana tvayi namrishyati vaidikakkaha brahma shivaha shatamakaha paramaswaraditi etepi yasya mahimarnava viprushaste. This talks about the position of demigods in relation to the worship of Krishna or of Supreme Lord Narayana. For Brahma, Shiva, Indra, and the Supreme Muktas are but drops in the ocean of your glory. This is how Yamunacharya is praying at the lotus feet of Sriman Narayana or to Krishna. And therefore, when he chances upon this verse, Govinda gets very, very attracted to this verse. But somehow or the other, because this is talking about Shiva's position, exact position, he doesn't want to go through that verse in detail, because in those days, as soon as you read the verse, you could understand the meaning. It doesn't require a translation as all of us do. We need a translation. We cannot do without a translation. So as soon as he reads, he understands. So immediately he throws the palm leaf because he doesn't want to ponder about that more, and he goes on his job of fetching water. Sri Shailapurna examines this, but he doesn't say anything. He goes on lecturing to his disciples. But when Govinda was drawing water from the pond, what happens is that verse keeps on coming back to his mind. Just like we all know, we might have heard what happens in the Ramayana, right? When Valmiki, right in the beginning of the Ramayana, when he gives that curse to that hunter, Ma nishada pratishtam to magamashashvati samaha yat krauncha mitunadekam avadhihi kama mohitam. He says, he curses the hunter. And then when he goes to take bath, that verse keeps on coming back to his mind, right? So similarly, they say that this verse kept coming back to Govinda's mind. So when Govinda was drawing water, he thought that I have to read that verse again. So he goes back, he takes the palm leaf and he reads that verse again. And then he thought that now I have to, talk with Sri Shailapurna, because it's been a long time since I talked with him. And this verse, why has he dropped this verse in my way? I want to know. So he goes to Sri Shailapurna. He was lecturing. Sri Shailapurna immediately stops the lecture, because that's not the purpose for which he has come there. He knows. So he stops the lecture. Immediately what he does is that Govinda bows down to Sri Shailapurna, because as a matter of seniority in age, he bows down. And he asks him, Govinda asks Sri Shailapurna. So this conversation is very interesting. This conversation has an inner meaning as well as an outer meaning. So Govinda asks Shailapurna, have you lost your property? That means outer meaning is that, is this yours? This palm leaf, is it yours? Have you lost it? And then Sri Shailapurna, he replies, we cannot lose our property. Others lose theirs. Meaning to say that I have my Supreme Lord with me very safe, but you have lost yours and you have come to another faith. So you have lost your property. Okay, never mind that. How is it that all of you are assembled in this place? Meaning that, how is it that all of you, being Vaishnavas, you have come to this Shaiva Kshetra? right? It is very surprising that Shaivas go to Vaishnavas Kshetra or Vaishnavas come to Shaiva Kshetra. All of us know His Holiness Radhana Swami Maharaj describes what happens in Shiva Kanchi and Vishnu Kanchi, right? What used to happen at least in those times. So how is it that all of you are here? Then Sri Shaila Purana, he answers, well, we have been brought together as various rivers meet in the ocean. Just like various rivers, they completely, they follow different paths, but ultimately they merge into the ocean, or they converge rather into the ocean. So similarly, all paths finally they converge into Vaishnavism. That's what he says. So never mind this. What difference is there between horizontal and vertical? He asks. What does this mean? About the tilak, he is asking, right? Vaishnavas, they put vertical tilak, they use vertical tilak, but Shaivites, they apply horizontal tilak. So what difference is there between horizontal and vertical? That's it, he asks. He does not ask about tilak or anything like that. So Purna answers, there is as much difference as that between beast and man. Because it is said that beasts, they never think straight. They always think crooked. In other words, they think horizontally. Man or men, they are supposed to think straight. Of course, men, they become beasts many times. But, and also it is said that beasts, they are, of course, here they've used that word, but in better to use in our terms the word of demons and demigods, right? So demons, it's said that they never walk straight. That means they cannot be in one path for a long period of time, right? They have to continuously change their paths. But demigods are not like that. They are very faithful to the Supreme Lord. So like this, there is a huge conversation that ensues between the two of them. And Purna or Sri Shaila Purna answers every possible question that Govinda asks in his own terms, because Govinda has an outer meaning and inner meaning for his question. And similarly, Purna also has an outer meaning and inner meaning in his answer, right? So this conversation ensues. And then after this, Purna thinks that this is enough for the time being, right? There has been a huge conversation now, and I will leave it at this. So he comes for the third time. Thereafter, he goes back and again he comes for the third time. And in the third time, what happens is that this time he goes to the garden, because twice he has already, he has chanced upon Govinda in the pond. He thinks that this time it is better to go to the garden. So he goes to the garden. There he starts lecturing on one of the very famous literature in Sri Vaishnavism known as Thiruvaimoli. It is one of the works of Nammalvar. So Ramanujacharya is said to have composed the Sri Bhashya based on the Thiruvaimoli. It's a very sacred literature for Sri Vaishnavas. So he starts lecturing on this scripture in the garden, and Govinda comes there for collecting flowers for Shiva's worship. And when Govinda comes there, he is reading one particular verse from the Thiruvaimoli. Again, the Tamil is there, but I cannot pronounce it properly. So the meaning of the verse is that who other than the Supreme Lord Krishna can deserve flowers or worship? That is the meaning of that verse. Who other than the Supreme Lord Krishna can deserve to be worshipped by flowers? And Govinda has come there to collect flowers for Shiva's worship. So immediately understands that this is the will of providence. So immediately what Govinda does is that he has climbed a tree actually to collect flowers. He immediately jumps down the tree. He throws away all the flowers that he has collected, and he wipes away the vibhuti on his face, and he tears away the Rudraksha beads that he has been wearing, and immediately he falls at the lotus feet of Sri Shaila Purna, and he says that all this while, I was on the wrong path. So please take me back to your fold now. And this is how, of course, there's a bigger story, but this is how, in summary, he was brought back to Vaishnavism. I'll just take 5 to 10 minutes more, because there are few very important pastimes of Govinda that I want to discuss. So this was how he was brought back to Vaishnavism. So Govinda, he was extremely grateful to Sri Shaila Purna, because he was the one who actually took all the trouble to bring him back to the right path. So thereafter, Govinda was a very, very sincere servant of Sri Shaila Purna. And when Ramanujacharya heard about this, that Govinda has been brought back, and now he has shifted from Kalahasti to Tirupati, and he has been rendering all kinds of services to Sri Shailapurna. He was elated. He was very, very happy. And when Ramanujacharya took his first tour to the north, he came to Tirupati because he had heard a lot about Anantacharya's garden. He had heard a lot about Govinda. So he wanted to meet them. So he comes to Tirupati. To cut the long story short, he stays at the house of Sri Shailapurna for 1 year at that point of time. Of course, he comes to Tirupati many times, 4 to 5 times. But the first time he comes after taking sannyas, he stays at the house of Sri Shailapurna in Tirupati. He does not want to climb Tirumala because he sees it non-different from Anantashesh. So he does not climb. But Sri Shailapurna, he teaches Ramayana to Ramanujacharya for 1 year, right? And Ramanujacharya, it is said that he learns 18 rahasyas, 18 secrets of the Ramayana. Gayatri Arthaha is one of the very important secrets of the Ramayana. This, all of you might have heard about Gayatri Ramayana, right? So Gayatri Ramayana is nothing but Ramayana has 24,000 verses. 24,000 verses. After each 1,000 verse, if you take the first letter of the 1,000, the first verse, 1,000, the first verse, 2,000, first verse, 3,000, first verse, all the way till 24,000, and you rearrange all of these letters, you will get the Gayatri mantra. So these kind of many important rahasyas Ramanuja learns from Sri Shailapurna. But at that point of time, he observes very closely the character of Govinda. And here, Govinda's character is brought out in very great detail in these particular pastimes. So one day, Ramanuja sees that Govinda is preparing bed for his master, for Sri Shailapurna. And as he was preparing bed, as he laid the mat, Ramanuja observed that Govinda laid on the mat himself first. And then he laid the bed, and Govinda actually slept on the bed himself first. Then he laid the pillow. Again, he experienced the pillow. And then this was how he was preparing the bed for his guru. And when Ramanuja saw this, it was quite surprising for Ramanujacharya. So he complains to Sri Shailapurna. Of course, he knows, but he complains. And Sri Shailapurna immediately calls Govinda and he asks him for a reason. And Govinda says that if by my doing so, Hare Krishna. So if by my doing so, Krishna. If by my doing so, I can make sure that there is nothing rough or naughty for my spiritual master, then it doesn't matter to me if I go to hell or not. This is what he replies. And Ramanuja is elated to hear that explanation. And on another occasion, what happens is that Ramanujacharya has gone outside the house of Sri Shailapurna to take darshan in one of the temples of Tirupati. And while he was returning, he sees a peculiar sight. He sees Govinda putting his hand inside the mouth of a serpent, inside the mouth of a venomous snake. And this surprises Ramanujacharya. But Ramanuja knows that I should not disturb him now, because a disturbed snake will immediately bite, right? So he doesn't disturb him. After he comes back to the house of Sri Shailapurna, and Govinda also comes back, he asks him, why did you do this? Why were you doing that? And Govinda says, he replies that, this snake came in front of me when I was going to Tirumala. At that point of time, I saw this snake. I observed the snake keenly, carefully, and I observed the tongue of the snake. And I saw that there was one thorn that was lying on the tongue of the snake. Snakes, they don't have hands or legs, right? I don't know, whenever their body itches, what they do. Whenever their body itches, how they scratch that itch. We have our hands and legs with which we can do so. But snakes, they don't have that opportunity. So this snake had this thorn on the tongue, and I thought that I should help this snake. And therefore, what I did was, I put my hand, I risked my life, of course, but I put my hand inside the mouth of the snake. I removed the thorn, and the snake was grateful to me. It didn't bite me. It went its way, and I went my way back to the ashram of Sri Shailapurna. This is what he said. So again, to cut the long story short, because I want to end now. So thereafter, Ramanujacharya, when he has to leave Tirupati, he wants to go back to Srirangam, because it's already been 1 year, and he has studied the Ramayana completely under Sri Shailapurna. And thereafter, he requests Sri Shailapurna that can you please donate this Govinda to me, because I want to have him with me, for the rest of my life. Because he has seen Govinda very closely, and he wants to empower him with teachings of the great acharyas, and therefore he asks him, and immediately Sri Shailapurna accepts, and he sends Govinda with him. So after they reach Srirangam, there are 2 to 3 other pastimes which I would like to share over here. One of them is extremely important, the last of them. So the last of these pastimes, I guess we don't have time to discuss all of them. Only one, the last one we can discuss over here. So Govinda was extremely spiritual. He was extremely devoted to Ramanuja. First, of course, he treated Sri Shailapurna to be his savior, but he was equally devoted to Ramanuja as well. So one day he was found outside the house of a prostitute. Govinda is said to be standing outside the house of a prostitute in Srirangam, or somewhere close to Srirangam. And this sight actually amazed everybody, and everybody was thinking, why is he standing over there? And then news went to Ramanujacharya as usual. And Ramanujacharya, when he inquired with Govinda, why were you doing so? Govinda replied that actually I was going past that road, and I suddenly heard, glories of Ramanujacharya being sung, that is of yourself being sung in that house. And therefore I could not prevent myself from standing outside the house of that prostitute. Although I knew that this is the house of a prostitute, but still I could not prevent myself from standing there and experiencing the beautiful glories of yourself. This is what he said. On another occasion, Govinda was a Grihastha also. Just like Ramanujacharya, he entered the Grihastha ashrama. At the same time, Govinda also entered the Grihastha ashrama. So Govinda, I said that he was completely enraptured in the service of Ramanuja, so much so that he completely forgot everything about his family life. So his mother wanted him to lead a usual family life. All mothers want us to lead the usual family life, right? So his mother came and complained to Ramanujacharya that, his wife has come of age, and, he has to spend some time with his wife. And so it was decided that Govinda has to spend one night with his wife. And Ramanuja instructed that to Govinda, and it's a guru's instruction. Govinda cannot refuse. So Govinda went back to his house to spend one night with his wife. Right. So the entire house, all the family members of the house were very, very happy that Govinda has come back after many, many years. And so they made a very big feast. They fed both the husband and the wife, and then they put both of them in the room, and then they closed the door. And Govinda sat on the bed, and wife also sat on the bed. And throughout the night, Govinda started lecturing on the Sri Bhashya to the wife. Right, we have heard this story in relation to Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur in Gaudiya Vaishnava Sampradaya as well. So the whole night, actually, Govinda was lecturing on theology and theosophy, the amazing attributes of God, the qualities of God, the amazing pastimes of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the enrapturing name, the glories of the name of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He was lecturing on this the entire night. And the mother of Govinda, she knew that he would be up to something, and she was staying in the next room. And Govinda's voice was said to be very loud, right? And so the mother could hear the entire night him lecturing on the Sri Bhashya. So in the morning, all the other family members of the house, they came to congratulate the couple, but his mother knew that, he has been up to something. So she came, and she was completely surprised, and she was completely shocked. She asked Govinda, how is it, my son, that, I heard a religious sermon in a nuptial chamber, right? I have never seen anybody else doing like this. And of course, news went to Ramanujacharya, and Ramanujacharya immediately decided that this Govinda is not fit for the householder ashram, for the Grihastha ashram. He immediately called Govinda, and he said that you should not be in the householder ashram. And I forgot to tell one thing, that when his mother asked him, how is it that, you were giving this religious sermon the entire night? At that point of time, what Govinda answers is that he says that when God is present, when the Supreme Personality of Godhead is present in every atom within this world, and is the same Lord is present within my heart as well, how can I, be so lonely enough that I can do anything but his contemplation? Because, what you want me to do, for that, some solitude is required, but I am not feeling any solitude at all, because I'm always in the company of the Supreme Lord, and I'm always in the company of my Guru, and therefore I don't feel any solitude. Without any solitude, there is no lonely act that is possible. Without any darkness, there is no dark act that can be possible. That's what he answers. And so when Ramanuja hears this, he's completely elated, and he decides that he is not fit for the householder ashram, and I have to give him sannyas immediately. So he calls him, and Govinda is also very much elated to take sannyas, and then and there itself in Srirangam he was given sannyas. And when he was given sannyas, one of the names of Ramanujacharya is Emberumanar in Tamil, they say. That was the name that was given by Goshti Purna when all that 18 walks happened. So he gives him the same name, Emberumanar Muni, to Govinda. But Govinda, he rejects that name. He says that I am not fit to take your name. So please give me a name which means that I am the shadow of yourself. I am your shadow, he says. So then Ramanujacharya, he gives him the name of Embar Muni. Embar in Tamil means shadow. So here I would just like to discuss the philosophy behind what he said over there and end today's lecture. So he said that I want to be your shadow. So one of the acharyas in his commentary to what Govinda said, he says what being a shadow of the spiritual master means. A shadow, he says, has three characteristics. First of all, a shadow has no independent existence, right? You cannot imagine a shadow existent without an object. Can there be a shadow without an object? That is not possible, right? Of course, in movies, they show ghosts, coming as shadows. I don't know how far that is true, but there is no shadow without an object, without a real object, right? So without the spiritual master, there is no independent existence for the disciple. That's what it means, he says. Second characteristic of a shadow is that the shadow always travels with the object, right? You cannot see a shadow, an object going to one place and a shadow going to another place. That is not possible, right? A shadow always travels with the object. So similarly, a disciple always travels with the spiritual master. That means that it's not that physically one has to travel with the spiritual master. Dhyayam stuvam stasya yashastri sandhyam. One who meditates on the glories of the spiritual master at least 3 times a day is always with the spiritual master. And the third characteristic, he says, now there is a real object, but the existence of a real object, is that alone enough for a shadow to occur? If that were the case, in darkness, there should be shadow, right? But in darkness, there is no shadow. So what is required? What other thing is required other than the object for a shadow to occur? Yeah, a light source is required, right? So the light source and the object, both of them together, they ensure the existence of a shadow, right? So similarly, the spiritual master might be there, but this Acharya says that as long as the spiritual master is not seen in the light of the Shastras, the disciple will not consider himself to be a shadow of the spiritual master. In other words, if a disciple has to understand the true position of the spiritual master, he has to see the spiritual master in the light of the Shastras. And therefore, Srila Prabhupada, in many of his lectures, he emphasizes this point that out of the 3 pramanas, Guru, Sadhu and Shastra, the Shastra pramana is the most important. Without the Shastra pramana, will not be able to understand the position of the Guru, neither will be able to understand the position of sadhus, right? Shastra pramana is the most important. So through the light of the Shastras, when we see our spiritual master in the light of the Shastras, at that point of time, we can understand ourselves to be the true disciples of our spiritual master, and we will start functioning as the shadow of the spiritual master. So after Govinda was given sannyas, he composed many works. So Ramanujacharya is said to have composed 9 prominent works on different scriptures, but Govinda composed a multitude of many other works in in the light of whatever Ramanujacharya wrote. So a very special personality, as I was saying, the day when Ramanujacharya left the world, after having lived for 120 years, he put his head on the lap of Govinda. So Govinda is extremely special personality. And through these pastimes, we can understand what special relationship the both of them, Ramanujacharya and Govinda, they shared. So many disciples of Ramanujacharya, they taught many different things. And Govinda, he actually embodied the spirit of pure devotion to the spiritual master. So having said that, I would like to close today's lecture. I thank everybody for having paid a patient ear. Thank you very much. Shri Ramanujacharya ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.